You've been recording that?
I have
thing.
not.
Those lights are on.
I just started.
Oh,
You've been recording. You got all of my deep, dark secrets.
me, Mitch.
All of my deep, dark secrets. So yeah, that rash.
That's
right. Yeah, that's.
Thanks for helping me with that.
You're
My
welcome.
first shirt.
Yeah. Hey.
We're online.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Hi, everybody.
Anyways, Greg, you want to start this one? We are talking about we called it King Jesus, Christ is King, the way of Jesus. It was the longest title in all of existence and said exactly what it needed to say in every possible way.
It did. Actually, a guy in our church gave me this shirt, and
Yeah.
I'm proudly wearing it today
Yeah.
because this doesn't solve.
Chris, this is for you.
Yeah, this doesn't solve all the problems of the world, but if followers of Jesus get real clear on this,
Yeah,
it solves a lot of.
it at least aligns with the right things.
Yeah, you can start to say, does that fit with Christ being king? That'd be a good question.
Yeah.
For all of us who are Christians
Absolutely.
to ask.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you want a couple of my thoughts on Christ as king?
I want at least all of them.
All right, so obviously when I say Christ is king, I'm giving an authority to Christ, and king is different than like, maybe president
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
parent or something like it.
Our contextualization of what a king is,
Right.
like we don't have a great understanding of it.
Right. So when I say he's king, I say I bow my knee to him. And whatever he says, I do. Right. And I just think most of us aren't prone to live that way in regard to anyone, even God. But just because we're not prone to doesn't mean it isn't healthy. And so whenever I come up across something Jesus said, whenever I come across something the scriptures in the New Covenant say pretty clearly, I just bow my knee to that. I just yield to it, right? And that's what I'm asking all followers of Jesus to do. I do understand the challenges of interpreting different passages, that it's not always crystal clear. I get all that. I also say it because we have some conversations, and this makes sense, like we're Americans, right? And so we have conversations about America, but Christ as King transcends America.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm patriotic. I love our country. I think it's tremendous, given me so much opportunity in so many ways. But America is not God's chosen nation. America isn't special in a way that other countries aren't. I'm just like, let's remember Christ's kingdom is global. It is worldwide, and it doesn't elevate my place or my country above someone else, and it leaves me no room to denigrate or undermine the dignity of people in other countries, in other situations. Like, I understand, we're Americans.
Yeah.
Right. And again, healthy pride. I have a healthy pride for being from Northwest Indiana. Right. I'm part of the region. Right. But ultimately, God does not care more deeply about us than them. And having Christ as king reminds us all of that.
Yeah. I had someone say, this was a long, long time ago, it's like the kingdom of heaven. If the kingdom of heaven is America, we have some problems. Like, because it doesn't fully line up all the time with what I think heaven is going to be like.
Yeah. And can I say this? At the beginning of that message, I said that, I've said in lots of public settings, I think racism and abortion are the two greatest sins of America, right? I say that, let me get a little context to that. I say it historically, right? Like if you look at America's 249-year history, those two, I think, dominate. So it is with a full awareness that we are, there's a lot of good things about our country, but there's a lot of stains on our history. And we are, I think the church, not the government, is responsible for bringing the way of Jesus in a way that shines light into this world. All right. That's our role.
Absolutely. So one of the things that always comes up in conversations like this is like the intermix of politics and religion and politics.
Yep.
Yeah. Go for it.
Well, if you've been around, you've probably heard me say before, you know what you get when you mix politics and religion?
Queso.
I wish. I love queso.
Same.
You get politics.
Oh, yeah.
Is what you get. right? Because the religion gets shoved to the side and politics dominates. And for that reason, for lots of years at Suncrest in our history, I would say and cast a vision and say, hey, Suncrest ought to be not political, right? And, for a long time that probably worked in certain ways, but I started getting people pushing back on it. And I think pushing back on it in some pretty healthy ways that I needed to listen to, that we needed to listen to say, hey, politics actually really affects people's everyday life. And we care about people's everyday life. So I don't think you get to just take a pass on politics. And I've heard this observation. I think it's mostly true that, perhaps in previous generations, politics or government was about like, hey, making sure the country is safe, right? It's making sure, there's roads to drive on, like those things. But that cultural and even moral issues have kind of made their way into politics. And what one of the guys I, sometimes listen to would say is, it's not that the church has gotten more political, it's that politics have gotten more religious. And when they start to bleed into scriptural issues, then the church to not talk about them would be, you're kind of missing the boat, right? Actually, now you're in our lane, right? Rather than me bleeding into your lane.
Sure.
So all of that to say, I no longer cast a vision that Suncrest should be not political. However, I do think it's very important to be not partisan.
Yeah.
And I simply mean you will never, ever hear Suncrest, Greg Lee, or hopefully anyone in leadership here align our church with a political party, right? A single political party, try to align the Christian faith with a single political party, or, take a particular stance on an individual candidate or something like that. I think that's where we get sideways. So I remain committed to not be partisan or endorsers of political candidates, but where the issues overlap, I'd be like, okay, well, I do want to be helpful. I want to help people navigate life today and think through some of these issues. And so I emailed our whole church and said, send us some questions. So we have a few today.
We do have a few.
So can I just say one more thing about that?
I think you definitely should say at least one more thing.
So I've thought about this a lot over the last 6 months. And one of the things I've noticed about Jesus, because I want to, you can imagine, not only do I want us to follow Jesus, I think Jesus probably shows us how to handle certain things. And one of the things I've noticed is that when he's teaching a subject of his choice, we're getting the Sermon on the Mount. You read all those red letters in the New Testament.
They're real good.
Right? He's choosing themes about the kingdom of God, about the kingdom of heaven, about, the way of Jesus, as I say it. And then sometimes you'll get recordings of interactions Jesus had where the questions came to him.
Yeah.
And of course, just like in the world today, this happens to me all the time. People are like, okay, Greg, I know you said this about heaven in a sermon, right? That's your lane. But what about this cultural issue? Well, Jesus experienced the same thing, right? Someone comes to Jesus and says, basically, should we pay our taxes? Right? And Jesus doesn't avoid the question, right? He actually answers the question. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. And this has been a little bit of a helpful framework for me. And it's actually the reason I invited these questions is to say, it's probably unlikely that I'm going to take 30-minute weekend messages to go try to answer all of these questions, right? But I do want to help our church navigate it. So if you have a question and ask, I think that's actually the perfect time to talk about things that may not be quite as much in the spiritual or kingdom of heaven range, but they are how you navigate this world. And, so if you ask your questions, I want us to be able to give you a helpful answer, not just be like, don't talk about politics.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's a framework that I've been inspired by, I think, in the way of Jesus.
Yeah, so ask your questions.
Yes.
There you go.
Ask them.
So there's a couple of things that happened. So Christ is King. The whole message that this conversation, even the prompting of your questions, has come up with. There was a massive cultural event that happened with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And when we say massive, like there's some things that happen in the life of Suncrest that we can look at and be like, oh yeah, this is an opportunity for people to explore their faith. One of those things that we do regularly, we call active movies. Maybe you've been to it recently.
Yep.
It was the week after the assassination of Charlie
Mhm.
Kirk.
Mhm.
The assassination of Charlie Kirk saw more people walk through our doors than our first week at the movies,
Yeah.
which was crazy.
Right.
It wasn't so like it was similar number, like it, but it was like just a little more. And so like this big thing that happened that people were wanting clarity on.
Mhm.
You got some follow up about how we had handled it even that weekend.
Yep.
And the weekend after,
Yep.
and the weekend after, and the weekend after.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like, let's talk about that process that led to getting to that one weekend where we basically said, hey, we've got 3 weeks of a series we did called Replicas. Come the first week.
We did.
We're going to listen to what the Spirit's doing and honestly what our church is trying to process
Yeah.
through.
I want to help you navigate it.
Absolutely.
Yes. So yeah, let me just talk about that process a little bit. I received more emails, based on how we handled or didn't handle the Charlie Kirk
Sure.
thing in our weekend services than I've gotten about anything in a long time. And, some of the emails, you can probably imagine this, everyone would know this. Like some of them are like just genuine, like, hey, help me understand, trying to figure it out. And some of the emails had an edge to them. There's like, how could you? Why didn't you? Those sorts of things. But again, I navigate all that. I try to navigate it with a lot of grace. I am a human being like everyone else. So if you send me an email and it starts to feel like you're critiquing me, like, how could you, Greg? Or you start questioning my courage. You really want to get me amped up, question my courage. But like, I actually want to try to model something I think really healthy. And that is, I can get as defensive as anybody else, right? But getting defensive doesn't usually help, right? It doesn't lead to a good dialogue. It usually leads to two people lining up against each other and shooting arrows that just never.
Hopefully something hits. I don't know.
Yeah. So on more than a few occasions, I just picked up the phone and called people who had emailed me, especially a couple of the more angry ones. And I said, hey, can we just talk about this? And we ended up with great conversations. That's what I want people to hear is like, okay, they were frustrated. I had my perspective on things, and I really believe in kind of a graceful dialogue. So I can admit that I may not have done everything right. I didn't. I can just say that I didn't do everything right in leading our church through that. Also, there are some things that I have a lot of conviction we did do right that you still won't agree with, right? But we can have strong convictions, but we're a church. We love each other. We'll try to understand each other. And I definitely learned some things about myself, about some ways I think I needed to adjust how I think about church leadership and these sorts of issues from others. So, not that I want to get a lot of negative emails, but it was a good growing experience for me, right? And, obviously we did interrupt the message series, right, to do this. And actually, your voice was important to me on this, Mitch. So,
Oh no, what did I do?
I was almost bragging that, I don't usually do this, right? 3 times in the last 25 years have I interrupted a message series. And I think we were in a meeting, you're like, maybe I'll do that a little more often, Greg. Maybe it shouldn't be a pride point that you stick to your plan. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that to say, hey, don't be tone deaf to what's going on in the world, right? Actually, let's help people navigate the obvious difficulties that they're facing. So
Sorry.
maybe once every 3 years now, I'll interrupt a series.
There you go.
Yeah,
Once
how
every
about
3
that?
years. So basically what that means is, please don't send a bunch of angry emails just because you have an opinion. And as you'll see in the series of messages we're doing called Ghost Stories, we're trying to be open to what the Spirit's trying to prompt in all of us. So trust that that's happening because we all see it happening actively.
Yeah.
I think where is something that you definitely also helped model for us in a really healthy way. You and our elders very intentionally modeled this. is the idea of slowing down our reaction. There's this quote, and I pulled it up just because it was meaningful to me during this time. And basically, someone asked a Christian thinker, his name was Dallas Willard, very, very smart guy. If you've never read anything, reads like a textbook.
You should read
You
Dallas
should
Willard.
read Dallas Willard. And someone asked him this question, and it's, what do I need to be spiritually healthy? Which I think is what most of us are trying to figure out.
I hope so.
If you're at least here,
Yep.
what do I need to be spiritually healthy? His response was, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. In response, he was asked, that's really good. What else should I do? And his response was, there is nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and our elders and our lead team tried to model this so well. We are not going to hurry through this reaction because there's outside things saying we have to. No. We are going to aim at spiritual health and spiritual maturity, make sure we're leading people through this well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do think it's a posture that I want to take, and I want to model for our church. That hey, we live in a reaction culture, but it is better to step back and say, God, what are you saying? Right? How would I process this? Let me talk to a few wise people who see the world differently than I do, but also honor Christ, and let me be healthy, mature, and slower about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that there's a piece to it too, that as you're processing how to not just lead our team and our church through this, but as it's trickling out through the team, we're interacting with, I know I'm interacting with people who are you said you had conversations about this that are I've never heard anything about Charlie Kirk or this political thing. And then I listened to 30 seconds and now this all seems great. Or on the opposite side, I was he seems like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And how do you navigate that even in the midst of all of this stuff, right?
Well, the algorithms do have a power
in our lives,
right?
Get off of the internet. Fight the algorithm. Yeah. You're watching this on the internet.
So, I do, one of the convictions I've had, and this gets back to being more engaged in social, cultural, political issues, is that if we don't speak to these, if you can't find answers from your church, then you're probably just going to go to the internet.
And you're going to get discipled by the internet.
You get discipled by your TikTok feed, your Instagram reels, if you're a little older generation, your preferred news channel on TV. And I'm well, I don't want people's thoughts just to be shaped by those sources. I'd say let's engage this and have a dialogue about it. So I will say this. So I've been slow to speak, and I remain slow to speak about particularly all my thoughts on Charlie Kirk himself.
Sure.
Right. And to me, it's pretty easy to say, oh, he's a complicated figure, right? But when I say that, if you had an algorithm that didn't make him complicated to you, then you probably think I'm an idiot, right? Complicated? What do you mean? And what I'm saying is, I talked with a friend I deeply respect just last week, and he didn't know much about Charlie Kirk, and then all this happened, and he clicked on one video, watched it for 30 seconds, and they kept feeding him the same thing, right? But I have friends over here who got fed the opposite thing, and you would think these two people are talking about two different men.
Absolutely.
So when I say complicated, I'm not denigrating Charlie Kirk in any way. I'm just saying you can find plenty of videos where he had a fairly respectful conversation. He was a good advocate for the faith, as an apologist, as we call it, someone who can kind of reason out and make good arguments for why Christianity is true.
Mm-hmm.
Totally, totally true. And I'll have people say, hey, look what he did. And then I'll say, have you seen the clips where he said he would be nervous to get on an airplane if there was a black pilot? They haven't even seen them. Right? Or where he said, you cannot call yourself a Christian and vote for a Democrat. That group had never even seen those clips, right? Which, by the way, I'm filling in a picture here with honor for a man who died, right? I am not trying to, speak negatively of the dead, but I just want you to appreciate why he is a complicated figure, right? And I'll just say this as a pastor, prejudice, prejudging someone based on the color of their skin or anything else is sinful. And it's false to say that you can't vote for a Democrat and call yourself a Christian. It's just false. It's bad theology, right? It's not right. And so I can honor many things about him and wrestle. Like, that's just the complicated figure that we have. But in our world, people may not have been exposed to one or the other of those. And I want people to be exposed, to wrestle through it all, right? Because it makes us healthy.
And to do it in a way that honors sanity and passion.
Yes. How is it? Well, I know how it is, but where it's like, oh, it seems like if you have sanity, you can't have passion. I'm like, that's crazy. Like, let's have some passion and be sane at the same time, right? But please don't be passionate without some sanity.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about it. We'll get better.
Yeah, because there's honestly enough things going on in the world today that point to lots of sanity and not a whole lot of passion, and lots of passion
and not a lot of sanity.
So like let's just say it as the role of government shutdown, and as of November 1st, SNAP benefits.
Can we just do a little test here? Like, if you're married or just find a best friend or someone, you should just ask them about yourself. Am I a person with both sanity and passion? Or do I bend one direction or the other, so that you become a little self-aware and be like, oh, people must think I have a lot of passion and not much sanity, or the other.
Yeah.
So
go for it.
Yes,
you can ask me when I get home. So the role of government and SNAP benefits and all, like, there's a lot in this.
Yeah, and this is part of the challenge, I think, of being non-partisan, is that there's a lot of questions about how the government ought to function.
Sure.
That the Bible doesn't answer.
Absolutely. Because the government of the time was Caesar.
Yes. But then people who are followers of Jesus aren't necessarily slow to make big pronouncements about what the government should or should not do. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but some make the pronouncement entirely from one direction, and some make the pronouncement entirely from the other direction, as if Jesus told us what we should do with SNAP benefits. Right. And I do want to kind of step back from that for a moment and say, listen, I actually think there's actually a great philosophical conversation to be had about the role of government in our world.
Sure.
You might be a small government person.
Yep.
Right. You might be a large government person. I happen to be one of those two. I'm not going to tell you which one, but it isn't because of my faith.
Sure.
That's like, there's not a governmental system.
I'm sorry. I was supposed to be
an economic system, whatever, that is the Christian economic system.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Because the economy of God doesn't make sense when you boil it down to it.
And, I'm a big Winston Churchill quote fan. So he is the one who said, that democracy is the worst of all, governmental systems, except for all the others.
Yeah.
Right. And then people misquote him and talk about economic systems where they say, and capitalism is the worst economic system except for all the others. And I'm like, well, at least someone's acknowledging, like, all the systems are imperfect, right? And you may have a view, but step back from that before you start attaching Jesus' name to the way you want government to be.
Absolutely. I had a professor in Bible college define all of those opinions as coming from the book of Second Opinions. So if you have that book in your Bible, you can come talk to me, because I would love to read that.
Yeah. And so let me lean into this a little bit. The SNAP program, we're recording this like right on the heels here of
first Monday
benefits going away for food stamps. Basically, that's what the program is. And I I think I want to live in a compassionate society.
Sure.
Right. And I think Christians, not the government, actually Christians should take the lead in being the most generous to solve the issues of poverty. It may seem like that's too big of an issue in our world today for churches to solve, and you might be right about that. But can I take kind of the SNAP benefits piece and just wade into immigration
Go for it.
all at the same time?
Yeah, go for it.
So, so the scriptures speak about generally being a person who would help feed the hungry, and the scriptures speak generally about being a person who would welcome the stranger, the immigrant, and especially the refugee. So someone who is fleeing a circumstance that's brutal for them.
And it's pretty clear on those things.
Yeah. The scriptures are not unclear about that. That's one off from saying, so how should the government handle all of these things? And this is where I'm slow to say, this is exactly how the government should handle it. But I do want to make an observation that in our society, what happens is when the government has handled one thing the same way for a long time, of course it builds in the expectation that a fair expectation that this is how it works, and so I should be able to count on that. And so whether it's a government shutdown that all of a sudden like no, you actually kind of promised that you would keep doing this, and now we're going to yank it away, or on the immigration issue, there's a lot of layers to the immigration issue.
Absolutely,
and I'm a person who strongly believes a country should get to define its borders.
Sure.
Right. And that there is a healthy way of doing immigration. For the past 30 or 40 years, we had laws that said one thing, and we had lots of policies that encouraged the opposite thing. Right. So it's like, hey, it's against the law to come into our country.
You got something in your eye. What's going on there?
Yeah. Like every force, that we put into place, was glad for people to come into our country illegally. Right. And now we have a big dilemma. Right. So what are we going to do? And I think, well, the law matters. We have to pay attention to that. You have a story I'm going to ask you to tell about a place where people who are doing everything legally are getting caught up in a very ugly way in what is happening right now. But also, I don't think we get to skirt the responsibility that for a long time we basically said come. And we made it possible for you to come, and then we incentivized you to come, and then we put together a system so you could come and work even if you... And then after you did everything, so I don't know how many of you read every letter of a agreement, when you're supposed to click at the bottom, did you read all the terms and conditions, right?
And then it asks you again one last time, like,
right, did you really read it? Yeah. And we all click yes, right? I'll just use myself. I click yes.
Yeah.
And, it could be that, a year later someone comes and says, hey, Greg, did you know that you signed something that said you owe this person $10,000 or $1 million? Could be anything. And I'd be like, I didn't do that. I didn't sign that. And like, well, actually, here it is.
Here it is, yeah.
And I'd be like, you got me.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't read it, but actually the way you delivered it to me, I don't think you wanted me to read it.
Yeah.
I don't think I reasonably was expected to read every line. Actually, I don't think anybody listening to this thinks that you're reasonably expected. You were playing the game.
Yep.
You're doing what's expected. And then, so it would seem odd that after you all said, hey, come, do it this way. And then you're like, I got you. Now you broke the law. You are illegal.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't pay the $1 million, you're a criminal. I'm like, I just did what all the cultural forces were telling me to do. And it actually seemed that's what you were wanting me to do. And I guess you can catch me on a technicality. Anyway, these are my rants. But I want people to appreciate that it's complicated.
Yeah, it absolutely
tell the story of this person connected to our church.
Yeah, I'm going to leave names out just for ongoing legal safety.
Sure.
Because this is a real story.
It is a real story. I can verify that though names aren't being used, this is real life in our church.
Where I have someone on my team whose sister-in-law is a Hispanic immigrant, Mexican immigrant. And during his brother, so the person on my team, his brother is engaged to this woman. We'll call her A, just for the sake. A and B get engaged.
Okay.
They get engaged in 2019, and I don't know if you're aware of something that happened at the borderline of 2019, beginning of 2020. There was this thing that happened where
COVID. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, yeah, COVID.
We can say that one out loud.
I don't know. Whatever. Just in case you were confused, the whole world shut down, and they had applied for her marriage visa to come into the country. And it got put on hold because the government basically said, "Hey, we need to stop any movement in and out of the country." And so what ended up happening is her application for that ended up expiring, and then it took almost 18 months plus before they reopened the application process for that again. They reapplied in 2021. It took then 12 months for that application to go through. So end of 2022, they get approval. Beginning of 2023, they get married. Her marriage application goes through. They file all the paperwork. She is legally here.
Yep.
She then, end of last year or so, being encouraged by her husband, A, being encouraged by B, to apply for full citizenship, not just a visa. This was after the political cycle, and there was some nervousness about that. And so that was part of why they were just trying to make it as concrete as humanly possible. So they started that application process beginning of this year. And then were called to come to the immigration office for an interview, which is actually fairly abnormal in this process, especially if you're legally here in a visa. He was given legal advice to not bring her. And in his well-intentioned, I've done everything by the letter. A has done everything by the letter. He was like, we have nothing to hide.
Right. It should be fine.
It should be fine. I don't want to give the appearance, even by her not being there, that we're trying to hide something. So she came and was detained within 30 minutes of the start of their interview.
She's followed every step she's supposed to take. She's here legally.
She is here legally.
And
they cited the lapse in her original application and were refusing to read her current legal
the rest
status.
of the question, the rest of the story.
The rest of the story. So for roughly 4 to 5 weeks, her family didn't know really where she was, and she didn't know because English is her second language. She slept on a bench, had 2 bologna sandwiches and 1 bottle of water a day, was able to talk to her husband randomly, has a daughter who is now also an immigrant, who is trying to go to a local high school and is scared out of her mind and not really talking a whole lot because, well, my mom's gone, what's going to happen to me? And in that whole process, they're going, we followed the rules.
Right.
Like, what is going on? To the point where she was ready to be, had started the process of deportation, even though she was legally here on a visa. By the grace of God, truly believing by the grace of God.
We prayed for this.
We prayed for this. Our team fasted for it for weeks on this end. Her case was dismissed and closed. It took another 10 days before we knew where she was, and they were given basically 4 hours notice of she's getting released in this city that's 6 hours away, 4 hours away. Go ahead and come pick her up. And it was like, okay, yep, we're coming now. And she's home now, but it's left them unsettled. And they're at the place where she is getting the proper full documentation now and on the road to that. But even the person in the immigration office was shocked that this was happening. So there is real life stories of things where it's not lining up fully.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so for 5+ weeks, she was separated from her family, detained, and even though she had followed the law on what she needed to do.
Yep.
Right. Like, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. And if the argument is, well, clearly she didn't in some ways, like that's not what this was. This was a lawyer went over everything, every step of the way. Someone they know works for the federal court system and also is double checking everything every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So again, I do live in the world of headlines a little bit, and like, okay, so maybe you see a headline and people are frustrated. Let's just leave it at frustrated with some of the ICE enforcement that's happening, right? And you might have an instinct, because that's in your algorithm, to say, well, if they just followed the law, then there wouldn't be a problem with this. And I'm just saying, a person connected to our church followed the law and was swept up in a bigger thing that's happening, and for 5 weeks didn't get to go to her job here, didn't get to see her daughter here. For most of that 5 weeks, her future was entirely uncertain. Like, I would live in fear.
absolutely.
If that was my wife,
Yeah.
if it was my child, like, what in the world is going on? And then, so she's home now. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
And do I expect life to be normal for her at this stage after what she went through? It's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
And I think this is all I want to say. I think it's right to enforce the law, and it's right to enforce the law in an ethical way. And it's wrong to say I'm enforcing the law, but to do that thing in an unethical way. And I do think there's room for, people of faith, pastors like me, to say, hey, let's step back. Let's slow down a little bit. Let's appreciate that, real life people are going through things, and, how do you balance justice and compassion, and how do you navigate when the incentives have been in one direction and then everything all of a sudden changes by the same government that you were supposed to trust? I don't know the answers to all of that, but I'm trying to have some sanity along with my passion, right? And unfortunately, I do see followers of Jesus who are not short on passion, but have no appreciation for the real life impact this is having on people, and including people who have followed the law.
Yeah. Which I think that there's something to be said about the way that we approach these things. And I think in some fashion, it is so easy if we're going to talk about, the algorithm, the big bad review man in the background, and the mainstream media in every possible way. I think that the thing that this process and walking alongside this individual on my team and their family on in some fashions, if your political talking points don't have real people with skin on it, you're just rage baiting yourself. And I think that we all need to check ourselves a little bit, because if we can't actually point to people, if the thing is supposed to be addressing, which is people, doesn't actually have skin on it, then it is just trying to get an emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. Without question. Human beings created in the image of God. And relational proximity. I come back to the idea of Christ coming to earth a lot. It's an incarnational move, right? I will live where you live. I will feel what you feel. I will experience what you experience. I'm not a distant God casting opinions, judgment, etc.
Here's what you do and I'll be over here.
Right.
Yeah.
It is. I'm going to get up close in life to people who are having the biggest wrestling matches and let that shape how I see things, right? How I address things. So.